Welcome back, everybody, to the Marketing Rules podcast, and it is my pleasure to have David Jenyns join me today, all the way from, well, I mean, it's down under for me, but it's kind of it's all relative. David, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast today. For the people kind of tuning in who may not have kind of heard of you or of your book, which we'll talk a little bit around, maybe you could kind of give us a bit about your kind of background and your kind of work history and a little bit around the book.
Yeah, fantastic. So I had a digital agency that I ran for about 13 years. And probably for about 10 of those years, I really felt like I was stuck in the day-to-day operations. I think all of the prospects, all of the clients, all of the staff would always come through me. I very much felt like the bottleneck. And it wasn't until we found out we were pregnant when I kind of had that moment where I was like, I've got to change the way I'm doing things. And deep down, it's in my DNA. I've always had systems and processes just in the way that I see the world. My dad happened to be a systems engineer, and I've always thought about systems. For some reason, when I got to that particular digital agency, I thought, this business is different. It can't work because Google keeps evolving and we are a creative digital agency and my team won't follow systems. So what's the point of putting them in place? And I had all of this baggage thinking that I was the guy running the digital agency. And I built this business that was so heavily dependent on me. And then I had that wake up call and I just pretty much started from scratch, started retesting a lot of the assumptions that I had. And over the course of about 12 months, I removed myself from a lot of the day-to-day operations and promoted a lady who was inside the business to CEO as I stepped back, and then I took a year off. And in that break, that's really when this whole idea of SYSTEMology was birthed, which is really now my passion. Melissa, who took over the agency and running it day to day, when I came back, I kind of realized I'd lost the passion for it, and she continued to run it for the next few years. And I never really had any sort of desire to sell that business because it was a nice little cash cow for me that she was running. And it wasn't until she had to move back to the US, and I thought, oh, wow, this might just be the bookend on that part of my story. And I ended up selling that digital agency, and the guy who bought it cited all of our systems and processes. And then I really doubled down onto this idea of SYSTEMology. And that's when I became a bit of a systems convert, because I realized how powerful they are and what a transformative effect they can have for the business owner and the team.
It's an amazing story. So, I mean, why don't we kind of start at the beginning, and why don't we kind of go around, tell me about how you're defining systems and what it is you're kind of discussing when you talk about kind of systems within a business, and how would you describe it?
So I think I use the term systems, and it's a bit of a catch-all because people call it systems and processes, SOPs, how-to documents, workflows. Like, there are all of these terms that kind of describe the flow. The way I think of a system, and in the context that I'm talking about it here, it's just a step-by-step series of effectively process, like steps that are followed that produce a consistent outcome. So it's, what are the steps do you follow? And I like that because it works on a very micro level, but it works on a macro level as well. It could be step by step. How do you edit a image in Canva? What are the step by step? That's on the micro level, but it also works on a macro level when you're thinking in terms of, well, how might a project manager look at this? What are the key milestones and steps in completing this particular project for a client or something like that? So when I talk about systems, I'm really just talking about the step-by-step processes that you go through to get this particular outcome.
Okay, so I know you kind of discuss this in the book. Look, where do we start off as business owners?
Yeah.
And for the listeners out there, where do we start, right, with our business to kind of, let's say, systemize, the business and get things in and get our kind of house in order?
Yeah. Well, the big thing is when you go from a business that has no systems to some systems, you have to think about what are the most important. You apply the 80-20 rule. And when I think about business, I think the purpose here is it's a commercial enterprise. So you're selling a product or service, and ideally you want to make sure that that product or service can be delivered without key person dependency. So no matter who is there on the team, you can sell the widget or do the service and get paid. So that's generally where I'll start with a client. We'll think about, well, what are the key steps that you go through to deliver that product and service? And it's all the way from grabbing your prospect's attention to selling them to taking the money to onboarding them to doing the work to then getting them come back. You visually map that out. We have a process we call the critical client flow to capture that. And that's really the best place to start. Of the infinite things that you could systemize, if you focused on just what you're currently doing, not what you would like to be doing, and you focus on how you deliver your core product or service, and you turn everything else off. And just because you don't systemize something doesn't mean it's going to magically stop happening in your business. Systemizing and optimizing those particular ones is just about improving the performance of the delivery of that central thing that makes you money in the business.
So give us some kind of examples, maybe from a kind of a smaller business kind of perspective, of what a small business owner kind of where they need to start, what they need to do to kind of what are the kind of where would you start with this?
Yeah.
Is it macro, micro? How would you go about it?
So you go through that thinking. Oftentimes, it's a one-page exercise that I'll get someone to start off with, where they will literally flow chart out, not put more than a word or two in each box. And you would start off and you go, how would you grab the attention of your target audience? Again, focusing in on what you're currently doing, not what you would like to be doing. So you might say, well, I'm running Amazon ads, or I'm running Google ads, or I do networking, or I speak, or I'm on podcasts, or whatever it might be. Think about the ways that you currently generate leads, and you would just in a few words describe each one of those at the top of the page. Then you work your way down the page. You think, when that lead comes in and someone says, I'm interested in your product or service, what do they do? Do they fill out a form on your website? Do they pick up the phone and call you? Do they do both? Is there another way? Maybe they engage with you through Facebook Messenger. And okay, great. We handle the incoming lead. Then the next one comes down. Okay, when it comes to selling, what happens? Do we hop on the phone? Do we have some sort of qualifying process, or do we hop on a Zoom with them? And what is it that we ask them on that Zoom? Okay, then what happens next? Well, then we consider preparing a proposal. Okay, so and generally when you go through this process, I always think about who is the dream client, that primary target audience, and what is a single primary product to focus on. Just focus on one product to start with, and capture what is most likely to happen. Because there's always variations. A prospect will come in and they'll say, oh, can I get your blue widget, but can I have this variation, that variation, and can I make this change? And when you start to try and capture all of these variations, it makes the systems creation very challenging. The real purpose here is to capture what is most likely to happen. And the reason we do that is because new team members, when they come on board, or other team members, we get them to handle the easiest scenarios, the easiest leads, the most probable scenarios. And it's only the exceptions that usually get escalated to the more senior team member. So the way that we kind of structure this and set it up is to capture that most probable. And as we kind of work our way down the page and we've thought about how we prepare the proposal, then the next thing is we think, well, how do we take the money? And maybe it's a deposit. Maybe someone fills out a shopping cart. Maybe whatever it might be in your business. Then we move down and we think, right, how do we onboard them into the business? Is there a questionnaire they fill out? Is there something that happens in the back end? Do you add them into your project management platform? And again, this initial exercise, it's quite high level, not more than a few words in each box to describe it. We're not going into great detail at this level. And then we go, right, to deliver the core product or service, what do we need to do? And then finally, to hand over once the work is done, what is that final stage? Do we meet with them for a final meeting? What are the points that we do in the final handover? If you map that out, and then as a business owner, you ask, where in that little map is the pain? Oftentimes, business owners or small teams will intuitively know. They'll say, oh, we don't have enough leads, or, oh, I don't want to sell another client because I'm already at capacity. And if I sell another client, I'm going to have to do the work. And then I'm already overworked and I don't have enough time in the day. So then they start to subconsciously push prospects back because they don't really want to do the work right now because they're full. There's, if you dig into it, somewhere in that map generally is an area of pain. And that's a great place to start, to think about, well, what am I doing here? What do those steps look like? And can I capture the vanilla process, which then enables me to get another team member to help me out, or to get a virtual assistant to lighten that load?
Yeah. So you've got this kind of let's call it a kind of, it's like a playbook, right? It is all kind of captured. I assume this is literally a kind of document, basically, that you kind of a step by step kind of flow. As you know, as someone who's run an agency, who's kind of in the creative kind of industry, like myself and some of the people listening, where does that kind of leave any kind of leeway for kind of creativity in that kind of process? You know what I mean? Or is that taken into account as well, or is it incredibly? Does it have to be rigid for it for it to work perfectly?
This is one of those misconceptions that systems and processes remove creativity, and it's quite commonly held. I used to have it until I owned it was like a sister company to the digital agency. It was a video production company. And I'm not a video guy. I don't know how to shoot or edit or do any of that. But we had a lot of questions through our digital agency. Can you help us create content? So we ended up setting up this brand. And I remember going out on a shoot one day with one of the videographers, and I spent the entire car ride with him, and we had a discussion around, did you bring the spare battery? Did you email the client to let them know not to wear checkered shirts because it looks bad on camera? Have we got a second copy of the script? Did we bring that extension cable? What lenses did I select? Like, it was a 45-minute drive, and we're talking about most stuff that just should have been handled. At the end of that shoot, I remember I said to him, look, next time we're going to create a shoot checklist. When you're at the studio, before you leave, I want you to pack the kit, and let's talk about first what you would need to have in that kit. So we did that, and then it was about 9 months later, I go out on another shoot with the same videographer. And I remember the discussion in the car ride for that one was worlds apart to the first ride that I had. In the second one, we were having discussions around the script and the emotion that he wanted to get, and how he wanted to frame up the shots, and what was important messages that he wanted to get across in the video. And that for me was the aha moment when I realized there's certain things in business that just need to happen, and happen a certain way. And if we can get those handled, it actually creates space for the creative stuff. So no matter what level of creativity you're doing, you probably have to make sure you get paid. There's probably a process for onboarding. There's probably a process for the way that, we used to ingest footage after a shoot. And it didn't matter how creative we were in that. We took the SD cards, we plugged them in here, we let them go overnight, we let the video encode, and like all of this stuff that just needed to happen a certain way. So I think you'll find that assumption when you test it, you still create space. Like, there are certain things that, especially in a creative space, that you want to give the space, but you also have to give bookends for it. Because my videographers used to, the work that they would do in editing and stuff would expand to whatever space they would give it oftentimes.
Yeah.
And sometimes we did need to put some ends on that because we were also running a commercial enterprise.
Yeah, I mean, again, it all makes kind of complete sense. Um, uh, who's the best people to kind of to work on this within the business? Right?
Yeah.
Is it led from the top? Is it the MD, the CEO? Is it kind of middle management? Is it the people at the kind of the coalface, or kind of almost kind of delivering this kind of stuff? Everybody, where does this kind of where is this? Where's the driver for this?
Yeah, so there's definitely a few key stakeholders. The first one is the business owner. The business owner needs to go all in on this idea. And it's not that they're going to do the documentation, but they need to support the initiative and basically lead, this is how we do things here. So firstly, the business owner has to get it. Then, oftentimes we talk about finding a systems champion. And a systems champion is someone who naturally is an organizer. And oftentimes that person might already exist in the business. Who is someone who creates checklists and likes to have things color coded and likes things a certain way and maybe is already creating process naturally? They might be a great person to potentially elevate into this idea of a systems champion, someone who can drive it and support the team and oversee it and can kind of take it under its wing. And then we often also pair the systems champion with what we call a knowledgeable worker. And a knowledgeable worker is the person who knows how to do the thing. So oftentimes, if we're wanting to know, well, what does our sales process look like? Well, the systems champion meets with the knowledgeable worker and watches the knowledgeable worker or records them doing the thing. Maybe they record a phone call or a Zoom that that knowledgeable worker has and then goes, great, can we pull the process from this particular recording? So, and over time, as you get this, like there's a few other little stakeholders that you might introduce, but generally speaking, they're the ones you start with. You've got the business owner, the systems champion, and a knowledgeable worker.
Okay. We've kind of talked a little bit around kind of some of the myths around this already, around the kind of stifling creativity. What are the other kind of myths that people have around this that usually kind of are kind of preconceptions that may stop them kind of going down this route?
Well, oftentimes they'll think that they're going to need hundreds of systems. And if, again, we apply the 80-20 and we realize that if we don't systemize it, it's not going to magically stop happening. Your business still is functioning and things will continue to function the way they are. Oftentimes you can have quite an impact with as little as 15 to 20 well-selected systems. They can really start to transform your business. Other things that people believe is that the team won't follow the process anyway. So what's the point? And a lot of that has to do with changing culture. And now's a great time with everything that's happened with COVID. People are a lot more accepting of change. So we're finding that the introduction of systems is more easily accepted at the moment. But a lot of it also has to do with the way that you recruit and onboard, because all of the resistance to this new change happens up front with your existing team members. But if you get a new team member on board and you share with them some systems and processes and you just say, this is how we do things here, there's no resistance because that's just the way that they've always experienced it. So that's what makes that challenge up front so hard and that hump you have to get over, because all of that pushback comes at the start. There are other things like people thinking that, when I ask people, think of a systemized business, what comes to mind? And oftentimes people think of things like McDonald's or Amazon or Google and these big multinational corporations. Their brain jumps to, McDonald's has been doing this for 60 years and people jump to thinking that's what a systemized business looks like. But obviously, they've really refined and tuned and done this year after year, and they're doing a hamburger business and they're recruiting 15-year-old kids to flip hamburgers, whereas there's a good chance the listeners here are running a different type of business. It's not a hamburger business, and they're recruiting really intelligent people who already know how to do things, and we don't need to tell them how to suck eggs. I don't need to tell them, here's how to send an email on Gmail. Like, some things they're going to naturally know. So some things will require more detail. Some things might require less detail. And it's thinking about it like a real person and thinking about it in the real world and not necessarily overcomplicating.
Yeah. And you mentioned something again, referring to kind of people that have been doing or businesses that have been doing this for such a long time. Is that refining? Okay, I guess you're not going to get this right first time, right? There's going to be tweaks, and it's in a constantly evolving kind of process. And is that how we should kind of think about the systems that we're putting in place?
Definitely, once you get on the train, it is a way of doing things. You can't really get off the train, as in having a systems culture. And this is how we do things here, and constant and never ending improvement is a way of doing business. The business owner and the team will start to see changes within as little as 90 days. Generally, though, I say for, significant change, it's committing to this for at least 12 months and really leaning into it. And then once you do that, you start to get over the hump. But then beyond that, what ends up happening is, in business, initially, it's a little bit like a game of whack-a-mole. And sometimes business owners feel like they're solving the same problem over and over again. And, it's basically the same problem, a different client, or it's the same problem and it's a different staff member. Systems is about how do we solve this once and for all? And then what ends up happening is the business owner then starts to work on higher and higher quality problems. This is just about codifying solutions to problems and the way that the business owner and knowledgeable team members have figured out how to do things, and how do we teach that so that that knowledgeable worker can be freed up to do only the things that they can do. Like, there's probably a lot of work that a knowledgeable worker does, the business owner and other team members, that really they're not adding much value. And if it was codified and put into a system, then they would only have to handle the unique variations, which means they can actually increase their capacity significantly.
Yeah. Before I let you go, David, tell us a bit about the book,
Yes.
the title, where we can buy it. I assume it's available on all good
Yes.
online retailers. For those watching on the video, I think David's about to show us a kind of a
Yes.
show us the book.
Yeah.
For those listening, tell us, give us the title and where we can get it.
Yes. So the book's available over on Amazon. If you're listening to this, though, head over to Audible. There's the audio version, and I read the audio version. The book's called SYSTEMology: Create Time, Reduce Errors, and Scale Your Profits with Proven Business Systems. And the idea is it's just a 7-step framework to go from I don't really have any systems in place to now I have at least a baseline. And I go through how do we identify them. We touched on some of that today. That's called the define stage. Then it's the assign stage, that's stage number 2. Where in the business does this knowledge exist? Then step number 3 is the extract phase. How do we get it out of the brains of those team members? Then there is the organize phase, which is basically where is this knowledge going to be stored? Then we have the integrate phase, which is how are we going to get the team on board? How do we encourage them and let them know that this is a benefit to them? Then there's the scale stage, which is what other systems are required to grow your business, things like HR, recruitment, onboarding, and finance. And then the final stage is optimize. So I kind of whipped through very quickly there the 7 stages, and we kind of focused on the first couple as we kind of discussed today.
Yeah. Brilliant. That is amazing. We'll obviously include all of your details and a link to the Amazon kind of listing in the show notes. But David, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.